LV Design Quick Tip. I just planted a bunch of this gorgeous purslane at the base of these sunshine ligustrums, and there'll be a video up as to how I did that. But I wanted to repeat this same jolt of color and texture in this basket that's got scented geraniums and some existing coleus in it. But I would really have to rip apart this planting to incorporate this gorgeous purslane in it. So what I'm going to do for now is just tuck it in there, hide the rim of the plastic pot with all of that effusive foliage that's growing over the edge. You can't see it. It's at exactly the right depth. I can plant it later if I so choose, or for the duration of fall, I can pretty much just leave it in this pot. And because it's a drought tolerant annual, or actually it will go to seed and come back next year, I don't really even need to worry about that pot drying out prematurely. So there I get this same rhythm and repetition of that color throughout this corner just by dropping and plopping. Well, hydrangeas have to be one of the most popular blooming shrubs on the planet right now. But that wasn't always the case. I can remember in the not too distant past when they had kind of fallen out of favor and were considered old-fashioned and a little bit passé. But now there have been so many developments in the hydrangea market that you can find a flowering hydrangea that blooms at almost any time during the entire growing season, from late spring and early summer all the way through late summer and early fall. So in June, in July, a lot of those great big blooms, the traditional pink and blue ones that we see everywhere as both a plant and as a cut flower, those are Hydrangea Macrophylla, and they bloom predominantly a little bit earlier, and most of those have done their thing right now, though there are some varieties that do rebloom. But as the summer ages, there's a whole host of other kinds of hydrangeas that are now on the market that you can research yourself to add to your own border. So do a treat for yourself, go to the nursery and ask about Hydrangea paniculata. There are so many different beautiful varieties. They do bloom a little bit later, and what I love about them is their color palette in kind of white, creamy white, aging to pink. It segues beautifully to late summer and into fall, and the colors that we more associate with that time of the year and with those seasons. One of my favorites is a variety called White Wedding Hydrangea. It's a southern living plant, but there are a number of other varieties. Quickfire comes to mind. So go to your nursery, look around, ask lots of questions, but tell your nurseryman or your grower that you are looking for a hydrangea that will bloom later in the season and that you want to try something like Hydrangea paniculata to add to your late summer border. Well, I feel like I'm doing a great state or what, because I'm here with my friend Kamala Gamble at her Guilford Gardens CSA or farm. What is, would you call it an urban farm?
I would call it a farm. It feels like a farm, an urban farm.
An urban farm, but what it is just a hidden jewel. It's right here in the middle of Nichols Hills, and I've wanted to do this for a pretty long time. Full disclosure, we're standing more than 6 feet apart, and we have the door wide open to her absolutely fabulous space out here, your urban farm.
Yes.
So that's just incredible. How did you get into this?
That is a great question. And it expanded over time. There was no grand plan, even though I have a business background, and there should have been a plan of some sort, but there was none.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So, but I had grown up with gardens, and then the lots are skinny here, but they're really far back, and I had worked in Chicago for Rick Bayless and come back and got used to these phenomenal heirloom tomatoes and everything that were there. And we had great farmers markets here, but not quite the breadth of choices
produce
and varieties.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I had gardens as a kid, so I'll just, I'll go out there and throw some seeds in and it'll all go great.
Yeah.
And it didn't. But,
ignorance is a gift sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
isn't it?
And also they say that there's, the first year garden always does well to hook a person. And so it did hook me. And so that was 20 years ago.
And now, Kamala, when I refer to CSA, lots of people ask what that is. It's community supported agriculture.
Yes, ma'am.
And what it means to me is that once a week I have access to all of her fabulous organically grown produce and the best tomatoes I've ever eaten in my life.
Oh my goodness, that is so kind of you. Yes, and that's exactly what it is.
But you not only grow all of this, you also cook with it. And
yes.
So if you're lazy like me, when I order my CSA, I can order a meal for my husband and I, great Mexican food. And like I say, it's all organically grown right here in Oklahoma City.
Yes, it is. And I will step back just a minute. We are not certified organic.
Okay, well.
Because that is a thing.
Okay.
And so, but we're sustainably grown and we use all organic practices, but I don't want someone to say, well, are you certified? So,
well, I have been here and I have seen all of your growing practices. So for me,
there's no spraying.
It's good as. And look at all of this beautiful produce and eggs. Are you now selling eggs too?
We do have some individuals that we contract with because we have 100+ people, and so I couldn't actually have that many chickens, and so we do have some great people that provide the eggs for us, but we do of course have chickens.
Well, last time we got an order, I got the CSA eggs. My husband said they were wonderful. We're doing that from now on. Thank you so much.
Oh, you bet. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, and how can they find you?
On GuilfordGardensCSA.com.
Okay.
That's GuilfordGardensCSA.com.
Yeah, or you can go to LindaVater.com and I'll have all of that information there too. Thank you. You are a hidden gem in Oklahoma City.
Thank you, Miss Linda. Always great to see you.
You too. Well, I am loving these cool temperatures, and my garden loved these temperatures too. I need to send Mike Morgan a thank you note. So it makes me start thinking about fall and what I need to be doing in my garden to maximize its beauty when everything really starts to turn those beautiful autumnal colors. So let's walk up and down this border and I'll tell you what's on my to-do list. Number one, I'm starting to cut back certain perennials that might be diseased or buggy, like this tall phlox. It's showing signs of powdery mildew. I'm going to cut these back and I'm going to discard the foliage because I don't want this powdery mildew to overwinter in the soil. Number two, I'm going to start cutting and harvesting and bringing in lots of my herbs. So I've got basil, I've got rosemary, I've got sage, all sorts of things that I can cook with now, but I can also cook with later into the season. Then I'm going to go through the border and think about what additional seasonal color I might want to add. There are some chrysanthemums that are getting ready to come into bloom, but they're not quite there yet. If I want to infuse a little bit more color into my late summer, early fall landscape, there are annuals that you can still find available at your garden centers that speak the color of the season, like these marigolds. Now, I've already got some in my border. I'm going to add more, but while I'm doing it, I'm also going to think about deadheading them and saving any dried seed heads that I might want to have in my seed inventory for next year. So you'll have lots of things that are going to seed. They might be marigolds, they might be zinnias, and you'll want to save those seeds for next year. I'm also thinking about taking cuttings of some annuals that I've got growing in my garden and maybe even some perennials. For me, that means I'll take some cuttings of some scented geraniums, maybe some angel wing begonias, other things that I might want to try to root and overwinter so that I can put them out again next spring. So those are just a few of the things that are on my September garden to-do list. What's on yours? Well, this is a special segment for your garden. And I want to start out, first of all, by expressing my condolences to all of you in the Oklahoma City area and across the state who have suffered horrific devastation to your homes, to your landscapes, and perhaps most of all to our beloved trees. I, like you, probably have insufferable damage. It just is heart-wrenching. And for me in particular, many of you know that I have a fabulous old oak in my front yard that's almost 100 years old. It's what I consider to be a statehood tree. It probably saw statehood. And it suffered just extensive damage, as did the other trees in my front landscape and everything in the understory below the canopy. First of all, I just want to extend my condolences, but I also want to be here as kind of a ray of hope about how we can restore our gardens and restore the beauty of what once was. So in the coming weeks, I will kind of dissect that and try to take it stage by stage. But starting out, first of all, be safe and do no harm, either to your trees, to your landscape, but more importantly, to yourselves. So as you start the cleanup process, please be careful. There are so many dangerous limbs still hanging out there waiting to come down on you or your roofs. So please be careful. I have a hard hat just for that purpose. Number two, if you're not experienced using any kind of power equipment, chainsaws, pole pruners, please leave that to the professionals. Please don't be impatient. Let them do that for you. I know it's hard, but you really don't want to hurt yourselves or hurt the landscape any more than it is. So the first stage is to just kind of start the superficial cleanup. I showed you kind of the wall of wood that's in front of my house, and that's my stage one. I do have people helping me with some of the larger pieces. You can see some of the mammoth trunks that have come off of my tree that are far too heavy for me to move, and I'm going to have to get professional help. But there are some things, some forms of debris that I can clean up myself, and that will make me feel a little bit like I'm in control, and that will help you as well. So start in a small area and do what you can, and then just start formulating a game plan. If you have an arborist, if you have people who can help you clean up the debris that you trust, then start contacting them. If you don't, please be cautious of people who might try to take advantage of you. So please be very safe. If you can, get referrals from friends who know professionals that are trusted. So I promise you guys, we can restore its beauty, but we want to do it safely. But please, I encourage you to just kind of engage your pioneer spirit, and I'll try to help you. And we can all try to recover from this storm together. Well, it seems now that it's really hot, all we do is water and lug that hose around. Well, sometimes we can overwater this time of year, believe it or not, and I want to share a heartbreaking example of that. I planted this beautiful urn filled with some dahlia tubers that were going to get really tall and vertical and grow up into this tutor, and then I surrounded it by white geraniums and white million bells and some white baby's breath. Linda Kavanaugh would have swooned over this arrangement. But I didn't check appropriately enough to make sure that this had really good drainage. So while I didn't think I was overwatering it, I didn't test the soil to see if it was soggy or not. And lo and behold, in this very heavy pot, the drainage hole got plugged up, and I was just literally drowning these plants. So you can see that these dahlia tubers literally just rotted. Fortunately, I've got some in the ground that are doing just fine. But that's basically what happens when plants get waterlogged, is their roots just rot. And they just can't breathe. They have no oxygen, and they literally just drown. So there's an example of just making sure that you have really good drainage, not only in your beds, but in your pots, and look for signs of distress before they get to this point. One day, all of this was just beautiful. The next day I came out and literally they were just languid and tired and just droopy. So you might want to be a little bit more mindful about that in your own gardens. Do what I say, not what I do.